to National Fisherman Live. I'm Leslie Taylor. This week on our program, Michael Crowley, National Fisherman's Boats and Gear Editor, talks about the Simrad FX80 Catch monitoring system, and we take a look at what's being done to prevent seafood fraud. But first, some fishing news from around the coasts. If you're at a Maryland restaurant and order a Maryland crab cake, can you be sure you're being served local crab? Or are you dining on crab imported from another country? Maryland lawmakers have introduced a bill in the state legislature that would make it illegal for restaurants or markets to mislabel the seafood they sell and would require restaurateurs to specify the origin of their crab meat. The bill's sponsor, Delegate Eric J. G. Ludke, said his bill is modeled on a seafood labeling law in Washington state. It would require seafood purveyors to identify the source of crab products by state or country and forbid them to sell anything as blue crab if it wasn't made from Calanectes sapidus, the species native to the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. Jack Brooks, co-owner of J.M. Clayton Company, a crab processor in Cambridge, and president of the Chesapeake Bay Seafood Industry Association, told the Baltimore Sun the bill would protect consumers as well as businesses like his. But he worries about the provision that would require U.S.-caught crab products to be labeled by their state of origin, since his business processes crabs from Virginia as well as Maryland, and some of the watermen he buys from have licenses to work in both states. Georgia has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to stay out of its latest legal battle with its neighbor Florida over water rights. Last week, Georgia asked the High Court reject Florida's request for a change in how the neighboring states share water that flows across the state line where the Chattahoochee and Flint rivers merge to form the Apalachicola River. In the lawsuit, Florida officials said their state needs immediate relief from Georgia's unmitigated consumption of water, following the near collapse of the oyster industry in Apalachicola Bay. Water consumption by Metro Atlanta threatens the balance of fresh and salt water that oysters need to thrive, they said. But Georgia officials insist that Florida has failed to link Atlanta's water usage to the crash of the oyster fishery and say drought is more likely to blame. Florida officials say that assertion is contradicted by climate data on long-term rainfall. In California, drought has caused the closure of some rivers to fishing. On January 29th, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife announced the closure of some Central Coast streams and North Coast rivers to fishing in order to protect native salmon and steelhead from low water flows. They also recommended that the Fish and Game Commission adopt emergency regulations on other rivers, including the Lower American and Russian rivers. Low stream flow conditions can prevent the passage of spawning adults, increasing their vulnerability to mortality from predation, physiological stress, and angling. Plus, drought conditions can devastate the chances of survival for eggs and juvenile fish in these systems, the department said. Under these extreme drought conditions, it is prudent to conserve and protect as many adult fish as possible to help ensure the future of fishing in California, said Charlton H. Bonham, director of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Look out, Kim Kardashian. A Lobsterman might be the next reality television star. A New York-based multimedia firm headed by Today Show weather anchor Al Roker is seeking to develop a new reality television show featuring lobster fishermen in Maine. The call for participants said, "We're seeking tough, active lobstermen. You could be a family who's been fishing for generations or new, hard-nosed skipper striking out on your own. Does this sound like you or someone you know? Email casting@alroker.com. After a 4-month review of Alaska's Responsible Fisheries Management Program, Walmart announced in late January that it will continue purchasing Alaskan wild salmon. To help with its decision, Walmart brought in the Sustainability Consortium, an organization based at the University of Arkansas made up of businesses, academic groups, and nonprofits. Senator Lisa Murkowski's office said in a statement that she was happy the world's largest retailer stayed focused on the facts and science concerning Alaska's salmon industry, rather than the rhetoric of groups outside the state who are pursuing an anti-Alaska campaign. And now, National Fisherman's Boats and Gear Editor, Michael Crowley with product news.
I'm Michael Crowley, National Fisherman's Boats and Gear Editor. And today we're at Pacific Marine Expo in Seattle with Mike Hillers at booth of Simrad Fisheries. Now, for a long time there have been a number of catch monitoring systems, but being able to visually see in real time what's happening to the trawl and what's going into the trawl is the best of all things.
So this is the FX80 screen. This was a trawl survey that we did in the Georges Banks for scallop and yellowfin. We've got a few of these systems on board boats in the Bering Sea. The major desire for this is to look at excluders and see how the excluders are reacting to, how the fish are reacting to the excluder. So the idea that there's so much bycatch and there's so many bycatch problems that need to be addressed, and the main thing you can do in a positive way is to get the fish out of the net while they're still alive and down at depth. And the FX80 gives you the ability to visually see what's going on and react with your trawl controls in order to allow the fish to escape, the bycatch fish to escape.
All right, thanks very much, Mike. And I suggest any of you out there who think you can use one of these, check in with your Simrad Fisheries dealer as soon as possible.
Thanks, Mike. Next, how much of an issue is seafood fraud, and what's being done to prevent it? Is that red snapper you ordered actually red snapper? Do you really know what species of fish you're getting when you order at a restaurant or the fish counter at the grocery store? A recent report by Oceana reported that 1/3 of samples of commonly swapped and regionally significant species were mislabeled. Earlier this month, Democratic Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts and Republican Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi wrote to President Barack Obama warning that mislabeling of fish at retail markets harms consumers and threatens the livelihood of American fishermen. The senators called the government's efforts to combat seafood fraud woefully inadequate. But how do regulators make sure that the fish you buy is what it says it is? Determining whether seafood is accurately labeled is difficult for consumers and experts alike. But regulators and industry are using tools such as inspections and criminal investigations, traceability systems, and genetic analysis to give consumers better confidence in the origin of their seafood. The FDA maintains the Seafood List, a list of acceptable market names for seafood sold in the U.S. market, to aid in the proper labeling of seafood. But processing seafood removes or damages characteristics crucial for accurately identifying a species, so traditional methods of identification can be insufficient. Therefore, NOAA scientists are turning more and more to molecular genetics tools to identify species and help law enforcement investigate and prosecute civil and criminal investigations of seafood fraud. An organism's genetic information is contained in all its tissue, and scientists can determine the identity of a species from a small sample, even if the fish has been frozen or cooked. They compared the DNA from an unknown sample to DNA from a known sequence using a library of DNA sequences. So does this mean you can send a sample to a lab if you think you've been duped in your seafood purchasing experience? No. But if a consumer believes a fraud has taken place, a complaint can be filed with NOAA or the FDA, who may then conduct an investigation. One innovative way to help consumers know that the fish they eat is actually the fish species they purchased are programs that connect consumers with the journey their seafood takes from harvest to plate. Systems that track and trace products through the supply chain can ensure consumers' confidence in the safety and legality of their seafood. For example, Gulf Wild tags red snapper and grouper harvested in the Gulf of Mexico with unique numbers so that seafood buyers and sellers can track each fish all the way back to the fisherman that caught it. But in their letter to the President, Senators Wicker and Markey complained that the multiple federal regulatory agencies that are tasked with fighting fraud aren't coordinating their efforts. And moreover, while imports account for more than 90% of the seafood Americans consume, the foreign catch is almost never inspected for fraud or legality. For more commercial fishing news and analysis, subscribe to National Fisherman magazine, visit our website at www.nationalfisherman.com, or subscribe to our twice-weekly e-newsletter. For National Fisherman Live, I'm Leslie Taylor.